Yep.
Well, thanks for coming on. I'm Jordy. Super excited to have you with us. We have with us online all transitioning vets looking for their next act, and most of them are participating in SkillBridge, and uh, we like to bring on folks like you to just share your journey and what you've done in your career, and then any guidance and mentorship you have for everyone. So thank you for being here, man. We appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me.
You got it. Ryan was a sergeant in the Army for 8 years. He's done a lot of cool stuff. Police officer, real estate investor. He founded a veterans podcast. It's called Everlasting Veterans Podcast, I believe. And he is also associate director at Veterans Rally Point, which is a top social media site for veterans to connect and build community. So Ryan, I'm going to actually hand this off to Noelle Skinner on our team, and she's going to MC the session. And then we'll go about 30 minutes or so, and we can take it from there. So thanks again.
Hey Ryan, thanks for coming on today.
Hey, Noel, thank you. I appreciate the invite.
So guys, this is my friend Ryan. As Jordy said, he has his podcast and I actually ended up seeing him on LinkedIn. He's very active on LinkedIn and he posts a lot of really like inspiring stuff. And I've been going through my own little journey like much of you, and struggling with like purpose and just all kinds of things. So I just randomly, hit him up on LinkedIn, asked him if I could be part of his network, and I got on a call with him, and he just had some really valuable like insights to share. And I'm like, you should definitely come to Seven Eagle and mentor because you have so many good things to share. So we're gonna get into a little bit about that. So, Ryan, can you share a little bit about your background and what first inspired you to serve in the Army?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate it. So I come from a long line in my family, like many others. My grandfather was World War II, Vietnam, Korea. My dad served in the Army. My stepdad served in the Army. I have some Navy in there. The calling to serve was in my family. I went into college first, and then said, you know what, I want to go into the service. Went into the Army in 2009 and never looked back. Said to myself, I'm never coming back to Connecticut. And I came back after about 4.5 years serving with Second Cav and deployed with them, and then transitioned to the Guard and became a police officer, and was a police officer up until August of 2024. So a little shy of 11 and a half years back in the hometown that I grew up in. During that time, I faced a lot of struggles. I still, and I want to be clear that, the notion of we're going to fix it and, it's just going to be okay. It's better managing, the transitions. I started this kind of mindset shift of transition is not a singular thing. There's multiple transitions that veterans go through. And so when I started shifting my mind in that aspect, about 6 years into policing, I had some of my darkest times right after my daughter was born. And I didn't, just transition back into the civilian world. I put on another uniform, so I had my own inner struggles in finding the why within me of what my purpose was, what my existence was, and what I wanted to do more with my life. When I started Everlasting Veteran, um, I didn't realize how much of a healing journey um, speaking into a microphone, not knowing if anybody was going to listen, was going to be for myself, not just bringing others on to be able to provide perspective and insight. When I started that in 2021, uh, 2022. I didn't realize in a year and a half later, I was going to create a new job, career trajectory for me that landed me here as Associate Director for Easterseals Veterans Rally Point, we have a footprint of 18,000 square feet here. serving military veterans and their families with full wraparound services here. We're 501(c)(3), and we provide everything from a VSO to a computer lab, a gym, and you think about it, we more than likely have it. And it's a continued healing journey and a continued transition.
Thank you for sharing that. Um, so like what was one of the most challenging things like coming, I guess like from the military to the police force and then out of the police force? What was one of the things that you kind of struggled with a lot?
Connection. Connection was one of the things. You may be able to be connected to people in a network, but that deeper connection of camaraderie and feeling the support, and understanding that it may be spread out a little bit more, but that day in and day out that you feel in service when you get out, it feels like it's not there anymore. It is, it's just evolved in a different way. And when I started looking at transition as more of a transformation, and switching that mindset, that's when I was able to grow. I was able to see the bigger picture, for myself and others around me, and be able to engage more, even with my family.
What were some of the like leadership lessons that you learned when you were in the army and just transitioning throughout? Like, how do you think some of that leadership played into like discovering the connection and kind of being able to reframe from your transition to like transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. Every single one of us has some way, shape, or form has some operational leadership within us, whether it's how we view leadership, how we've been taught leadership. And for me, leadership is leading with nurture and care, and everything that you do with nurture and care, you have to do it for yourself as well. Because if you're not there for yourself first, you can't be there for others. And learning to be able to also follow at the same time is so key to being a good leader, because when you pour into others, you need somebody else or others to be able to pour into you, because otherwise you're going to hit burnout.
That's such a good point. Learning how to like follow and then take time to just for self-care. That's just so important. Um, so what were some values that you just really ended up just taking in?
So one of the big things for me when I started doing a mindset shift for myself, and a lot of people don't break down what a mindset shift is, and it can be positive and negative, right? You want to look at, when you're looking at a positive mindset shift, is you have to be vulnerable, right? You have to be able to open yourself up to vulnerability with others to be able to figure out how to grow, right? That's one of the big things that we don't do very well with, because it's a trust thing, right? And when you build your foundation on trust and trusting others, right, you may get hurt in the process. It's a natural progression in life. Not everybody has good intentions. However, when you surround yourself with others that want to see you grow and see you get through these barriers, right, you have to lay your foundation with trust, and you have to be vulnerable with the right people, because that's going to allow you to truly grow and start looking inward to be able to then project outwards.
I really see that with you. That I feel like that's why I was able to reach out to you because it's funny because I never met you and just I was like, I just feel like this guy would have a lot of really interesting perspectives to help me like get through this challenging period that I'm experiencing. So I like definitely the trust comes through and the vulnerability comes through. So that's so awesome. Um, were there any like practices that you used to kind of help you with your resiliency?
Yeah, so I picked up along the way this method called Control Alt Delete. And it's control yourself, alter your mindset, and delete the negativity. I use it in the small things and I use it in the big things. And we so often not allow outside influence, right? To steer us in the direction that we think we want to go because that's what others tell us, right? But is your intent to allow others to tell you where to go, or were you to figure out what your purpose is? You're going to continue to go down the road of trying to figure out your why if you allow others to be that outside influence. And for me, I had to start shedding what was the noise. I had to figure out, okay, there's stuff I'm going to have to do alone. There's stuff where I'm going to feel like I'm alone in this and be okay with the silence because I am building upon a foundation for myself, not just for me, but for my family and others around me, right? And lean in when it's you're ready for that support. Lean in as hard as you can because when there's other people around you that are willing to do the same thing and have the same drive, right? Leaning in, no matter if you get emotional, right? Of sadness, happiness, whatever, leaning in with others, that's where you're going to find your camaraderie outside of service.
That's such great advice. It looks like Monique has a question.
Hi, good morning, Ryan.
Good
I
morning.
just I wanted to know, has there on your journey, has there been any cues that people have showed you or that they have let on that made you not want to reveal your vulnerabilities to them? Has there been like people who you looked at, or maybe they did something and you were like, you know what, maybe this isn't the person that I should be vulnerable with?
Absolutely. And that's a very important question. Um, I look at intent, right? And a lot of times we've always said go with our gut feeling. And I've referred to intent as, we can almost smell it if it's bad or good. And if we turn our nose up to it like, this doesn't feel good, right? We should probably rethink, even though we're so eager to grow and so eager to get to the next step, is it good for you, right? Your life and what you want to build, so navigating that is difficult sometimes, but you have to go with your gut. What's good for you in the foundation that you're building after service? And you want to make sure that you keep in the mindset that this isn't a singular transition, right? The first transition is the separation from service, right? After that, there's multiple different transitions. And I took a dive into different studies from different militaries around the world as well. One of the things that is a combination is a lot of stuff that comes up is sometimes 5 years down the road of if it's combat experience or PTSD, anything like that, because we're riding this wave of this high of being out of service and wanting to grow our hair out and grow a beard or wear whatever we want, and we're throwing structure to the wayside, right? Because we want to be free. The thing is every single thing that we've built in our lives with that structure as well is so crucial and important to make sure that we're adapting that structure into our lives because that's one of the comfort things for us as we transition out. Now, can we mold it into something we want and how we want to structure our life? Absolutely. But having the right people by your side when you're building that structure is so crucial and important.
Thank you.
Ryan, were there any, I know there's one that you shared with me, but what were some of the key like resources that you kind of leaned into that helped you with some of your different transitions?
So one of the most recent, I'll talk about one of the most recent, and then I'll also talk about some of the other ones in the past. So Camp Southern Ground Warrior Week, I had my transition as associate director here, and trying to get through that stuck barrier of mental creativity and where I want to go, and looking inward deeper into who I am and my why. And Camp Southern Grounds Warrior Week down in Georgia is one of the most phenomenal intensive programs that is out there right now. And that allowed me to push myself to the next step now. Now, previous to that, there was a lot of searching alone, or feeling like I'm searching alone. But I had my family that I was pushing away. I had friends that I was pushing away, and I had some colleagues that I was pushing away. Those three things made up pretty much all my interactions after service. And I had some friends that served, that I grew up with, and I was even starting to push them away because I was searching for the immediate answer, right? I was searching for that fix it right now type of thing. Um, what I realized is I wasn't willing to put in the work for myself yet. And when you're willing to put the work in for yourself, that's when you start finding your why in the direction you want to go. There's a lot of times it took, say, 12 years after service to really find my why and being here at Veterans Rally Point, right? I didn't have the Camp Southern Grounds. I didn't have Seven Eagle Group. At the time, it was monster.com, and here's how to form a really crappy resume, right? And good luck, and transition out of the military from Germany, and get home. And it's not this big welcome home ceremony or anything like that. It's not the movies. And one of the things I started leaning on was family and friends, outside perspective. So often than not, we will gravitate towards what's comfortable, and that is other service members. When I started leaning on outside perspective, right, it allowed for the transition into the civilian world to be a little bit easier to see the overall picture. Because as we're serving, the world is turning around us while we're in service, right? And things are growing, the way people get hired, connection and all that stuff. So getting an outside perspective was crucial and key when I leaned in to not just rely on just service members because it felt comfortable.
That's a good point. I just wanted to talk a little bit about more or a little more about Camp Southern Ground. Um, I know that's not the only thing, but I wanted to make everyone aware. Camp Southern Ground has two different programs. They have Warrior Week, which is geared towards transitioning vets to help you rediscover yourself, find purpose, hit all the pillars, your spiritual pillar, your mental health, physical health. They talk about nutrition, but it's completely free. Like 100%, they will pay for your travel. If you are able to commit to a week, then they will pay for you to get to Atlanta. They will pick you up from the airport. You'll be there for a week, and then they'll get you back to the airport, etc. So there's also a camp for your family to help your whole family with the transition, because we don't transition alone. We transition with our family. That one costs a very low amount, but I think that if you were struggling, they would probably try to work with you on that. But the other program that they have is specifically for PTSD. So just check out the website. I'm sorry, I wasn't planning on talking about that, but it's such a great resource to just help you just get out of your environment and kind of refocus. So I just wanted to share all that information. Okay, moving on. So let's back up a little bit and talk about like your transition from the military going into policing. Like was like how what made you decide to go into policing?
So I started the conversation with the recruiter from Germany. Um, so my transition was a little bit different. I had a year and a half left on my contract, orders to go to 101st Airborne. I knew I was going to spin up with them and do another deployment, and I had orders in hand to PCS, to that unit. Well, the government at the time was doing involuntary separations due to economic reasons. And um, anybody that wasn't re-enlisting for another 3 years and you had less than a year left on your contract, they were changing your ETS date and you were set to get out whenever that was. I thought I was good because I had a year and a half left. So a year and 3 months to the day, my orders to go to PCS disappeared, and then I had orders to ETS, and I had 3 months to figure it out from Germany what I was going to do. So I got back on the phone, threw some minutes on my phone to call the recruiter and be like, "Hey, I'm going to start emailing you some more. Email everything you got. I'm going to have to take the test." So fast forward, November of 2012. I come back stateside. I'm on terminal leave for 30 days, and I take the police academy test. So I had nothing else. That I was putting in job applications, all that stuff. It wasn't like it was now where there was massive networks built to be able to have pathways for employment. It felt like there was not a lot of resources there, and I had to take ownership, and the onus was on me to figure it out. Um, so I take the test, and I was unemployed for about 7 months before I got hired, collecting unemployment, which took forever, and it was a nightmare. Going back to school, so I can get some BH, and take some more classes. But it was nerve-wracking for those 7 months of, if this doesn't work out, what is my next step, right? And there's so many veterans that still go through it to this day. Um, One of the big important things to realize is, if you're transitioning out then or now, nothing's going to be perfect. And sometimes you have to have a little bit of faith, have a little bit of hope, and make sure that you line yourself up as best you can, right? And network as much as you can, because those opportunities that you create, you're not going to do by not having a conversation.
That is such a good point, and that's a reoccurring theme we're hearing often. Is it You really need to build your network. Sorry, you really need to build your network. It's like one of the first things we kind of talk about during foundations is building that network and how to build that network a little bit. What were some of the things that you found to be successful for yourself when you were working on building that network?
Figuring out what my strengths were. And this is not a bullet point on a resume of what my job description was, right? Figuring out what your strengths and how it can work with other companies. And you know, we talked about Warrior Week. They do that as well, and that's what intrigued me to start working with them. Is Clifton Strengths has been around for a very long time. Um, Gallup's 5 elements of well-being is another thing, which is career and purpose, uh, community, social, financial, and physical health. So understanding where you need to fill the gaps in your elements of well-being. For instance, it could be as simple as, your physical well-being is petting a dog, right? I dove in, and I think, Noel, one of the posts that you might have seen was hacking your happy hormones, right? And you have four major hormones of serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and these things are so crucial and important when you're trying to balance your elements of well-being. And this isn't it's not like a kumbaya, sit around a fire or anything like that. This is real life stuff. This allows you to be able to regulate how you feel, right? So that you're not stressed, so that if you have anxiety like myself or PTSD, it allows you to manage things a lot better. So making sure that you focus on yourself is so crucial and important for that transition. When the stress of life, it's going to happen. The stress of life comes down, you're able to fundamentally have stuff in place, where some people figure they'll go and work out more. Well, that only satisfies a certain amount, right? And you have to focus on it equally, and sometimes one at a time, so just make sure that when you do focus on it, you're doing a little bit here and a little bit there, because it allows you to not get overwhelmed.
Thank you. That's a really good pro tip. So okay, how did you get into Easterseals and being the associate director there?
So I started the podcast Everlasting Veteran, and uh, they had contacted me as a contractor to come up and build a studio, and I'd already built my studio, and they wanted me to, instruct classes, and the digital media aspect and our partnership with Comcast. And so I started teaching classes, still a police officer at the time. I would come up, once a week, teach classes, and slowly started building the studio. And the power of storytelling is one of the biggest parts of not just a healing journey for myself, but creating that opportunity for others to be able to tell their story as well. And that turned into a conversation of a job opening, and transitioned from being a police officer in August of 2024 to being an associate director here.
What are some of your favorite things about working there?
Uh, Connection and continuing to grow. We have active guard, reserves, veterans, and their families being a part of the community that I am so much part of, and being able to, pour my experiences and also receive them, learning how to receive others' advice and receive others' care, and nurture, to be able to grow and continue to be, a strong leader, not just because, somebody wants me to be, and it's not a matter of a title. It's literally standing at the tip of the spear and saying, we're doing this together. Right? Who wants to stand with me? And it's not a single individual, standing at the tip of the spear. It is us standing side by side. And that feeling is what I've been longing and searching for after service. And we all do, and finding your group, finding your community. One of the big things is finding, 2 to 3 real core people in your social network where you can lean on, right? These 2 to 3 people are going to be so crucial and important to your growth and your success. And it's not a matter of just having a conversation. It's leaning on them for sound advice, and being able to expand your network upon that. That's where that community aspect comes in.
Yeah. Your inner circle is so important for moving forward. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Um, I was I helped with resiliency training, and we would talk about your board. Like you would have your board of people that you would go to for specific things, and some people had strengths in some areas and others had strength in other, but they were people that you really trusted. So like if you had really good news, this was your cheerleader, this is who you'd want to go to for encouragement. If you like wanted to hack some financial things, you would have somebody, for example, that you really trusted that you would lean into for financial information or advice. But no, this is such a good point, like with your core people. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your podcast. Like moving into the podcast, how do you select topics for your guests for the show, and what do you learn like hosting these conversations?
Yeah. So one of my big things is the power of storytelling. I've had everybody from service members, veterans, to country music artists to world-renowned historians, and um, it is gaining perspective, and sometimes um, sometimes the guest presents itself, the opportunity is there, and then there's other times where I have in my head as a futuristic strategic thinker of kind of mini episodes I'm thinking of putting out, this growth period, right? And it's very similar to how I wrote my book. This is my camo, and I want to bring people on a journey, that insight that I have and what others have, and creating a roadmap through storytelling, and that's how I like to bring guests on, is creating that roadmap of that journey of successes, of not so great successes, so others can relate to it and be able to grow upon and be like, I went through that as well, and it is there's something about putting headphones on and listening to your voice and listening to others. I don't listen to podcasts. It's the weird thing. I don't listen to podcasts, but I have a podcast. So it's a personal, um, I guess, in the realm of like talk therapy, and it serves the same purpose of being able to tell my story. Let's see.
Um,
Just throwing it
I
out.
I saw someone asked, "What do you think of your voice?" and the questions.
So So one of my things when I started podcasting, the first episode that I was putting out, The Knock That Gave Them Wings, um, I absolutely hated hearing my own voice. Absolutely, absolutely hated it. I didn't know what to expect when I started it. There was the unknown uncertainty of, are people going to connect with it? Are people going to actually want to hear my voice? Am I going to want to hear my own voice when I publish this? I took 100 takes, a little over 100 takes on my first episode, scripted it out. I had exactly what I was going to say. I didn't have video at the time, and I read pretty much verbatim off of what I wrote down on a piece of paper, and it didn't feel natural at all. All right, it wasn't who I am, and it wasn't certainly like what I wanted to become, and it felt so awkward. But I got it done, right? I got it done. I pushed through it. And I said to myself, I said, I'm not ever doing that again. I'm not writing out this full script. I'm not writing some shows I've been on. They're like, send us 10 questions, and they'll go through the questions and be done. And I'll be like, wait, I have so much more to tell, and even that's awkward too. So for me, I just had to go back to what felt comfortable for me, how I wanted to tell my story, how I wanted to bring guests on and them be comfortable as well. And it's a conversation, right? There may be some, talking points and bullets. I would say 95% of the time, we hit the first bullet and the conversation goes where the conversation goes. And because of um, the way that I have a conversation, and I rely back on my training, as a police officer, through interviewing and everything else. I said, how do I get to know somebody and build rapport that I've never met before? Right. And as a police officer, you would sometimes have to build very quick rapport, right? And how would I want to have that conversation with somebody for somebody else to listen to, right? And I said, I just need to start having a conversation. And that's when I decided that and started settling into podcasting.
That's very cool. I laughed when you were talking about like redoing your first podcast 100 times because for Seven Eagle, we actually have this ability to build profiles, and you have to put a video up on there. And yeah, I probably did like I lost count honestly. Like I redid my video a million times, and that was only for like 2 minutes. So I can't even imagine doing like a whole podcast that way. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Um, so Are there any like particular episodes or stories from your podcast that just really stood out that were really memorable?
Yeah, so Holly Higgins, she's a Gold Star mom, and I connected with her through networking. Her and I try to go back when we first connected, and we can't remember at this point. It's been a few years, and she talked about her healing journey. So she's with the Hero's Journey and with Scott Mann in the Hero's Journey, and she really hammers. She has storytelling sessions that she provides, and how she healed through the loss of her son when he was killed in Afghanistan. And her and I have been on this healing journey together. Conversations even after we've done a podcast episode, and we even talked last night. And the other one would be Javon Quells. Javon Quells is a retired Navy SEAL. He is anybody show of hands heard of the toughest test on Fox? So the toughest test on Fox. The Special Forces, the world's toughest test. So he's one of the co-hosts on there, and you know he plays a drill sergeant on a TV show and brings these celebrities through. And him and I were able to just sit down and have a candid conversation of what was life, really after service. Yeah, we touch on the show, um, but really it's like, who's Javon, right? And why is Javon doing what he's doing now? The other one would be Nick O'Kelly. He is retired Special Forces pilot. Nick just came out with a book called The Stigma. Um, Phenomenal individual. And that episode is breaking the silence, and him and I started diving into operators and veterans of breaking the silence of what it's like to be vulnerable, what it's like to actually say, I'm not okay, right? And I don't have everything figured out, right? And it doesn't have to be a large, sappy story or anything like that. It's just saying, hey, I need help. I need help finding a job. I need help having a conversation with somebody. I need help somewhere, right? And understanding that it's okay to ask for help, whether it's a small thing or a big thing. So I would say those probably were three of the ones I enjoyed the most. And then outside perspective, I would say with Craig Wayne Boyd, he brought some insight, and perspective, what life was like after winning The Voice and being separated from his family, being on tour, and what that did to his mental health, and him having to reel it back in, to be able to refocus on family and what his purpose is, So I would say those four right there were um, probably ones that stuck with me the most because I connected with it as well. Just, being a host of the show and also gain insight for myself, and that's what I love about podcasting and bringing guests on.
I think I heard the one with Javon Quells. I
Yeah,
listened to that one.
we've done a couple. We're actually lining up to do another one. The same thing with Nick O'Kelly. We built some of the building blocks to about what we're about to do, and the next few episodes that are going to come out are like a no holds bar. The problem, not necessarily a problem, but when I was a police officer, it was very difficult to grow it how I wanted to because I was stuck in the restraints of um, a social media policy that the department had. So there was I talk a lot of times of micro and macro influences in my life and other people's lives, and that's how I teach as well. You focus on the micro ones, which is your immediate focus in your life, and the macro ones more of a societal influence. And that the macro influence of the department was holding me back from actually growing for myself, because I wasn't able to speak how I wanted to speak for the most part. And breaking through that barrier, allowed me to metaphorically spread my wings, not for the world to see, but for myself to see it for myself, right? Of what are my capabilities now, as Ryan, for myself, for my family, for my friends, and focus on that. And that's really what started the true journey for me of my mental transition out of the military.
That's awesome. Okay. I wanted to open it up to see, does anybody have any questions for Ryan? Monique, your hand was the first one I saw.
Yay. Okay. I was wondering what your so did you have any criteria that you made up in your mind on what details to leave out of your storytelling when talking to people? Because sometimes I think maybe we reveal too much and we kind of don't want to offend people or scare people. But was there any thing that you any technique you use to like tell a story on maybe some not so happy times that you didn't want to share?
Yeah, very good question. So I'll go back to who you want to share that deeper story with, right? And your audience may not necessarily, sometimes we have to read the room, right? And it's not a matter of judgment or anything like that. It's just sometimes the opportunity that presents itself, may be a shorter, condensed version, right? And it is on us to decide how much we want to share. So you can decide to share all, right? And or you can decide to share it with a select few, right? That's your choice. So what I would say is, when you're ready and you want to share your story, you're going to have a moment where you go, I need to say everything because it's going to be freeing, or I feel like it's going to help somebody else. You're going to have that opportunity, and you're going to be the one that makes that choice. Um, so it's a little bit more complex, because as people, we strive for connection. All right. But we also strive for trust, and we're going to know, when we want to let people in a little bit more. I'm at the point in my life now where every opportunity that exists, I try to tell my story completely. We don't have enough time in this call to be able to go over just my story. But when we speak about dark times or successes, when you're trying to speak of growth, so often than not, we uh, have a broad version of what it is. So I'll tell you this: 2017, I didn't want to exist. 2017, I was ready to check out. My daughter's birth is what, in February, I was overwhelmed with work, with figuring out who I am, um, bringing a child into this world and having two older stepsons. 2017 was my darkest time, and I didn't want to exist. From there, that's when I built things, right? And I'd already been out of the military, you know, since, well, 2017 was also when I got out of the Guard, after active duty and then Guard time. So I had a lot of transitional stuff happening in my life. And at that time, I didn't want to share it with anybody, right? I locked up, I buried it as deep as I could. And that was the most unhealthy thing I could have done for myself. All right. So I'll share that little piece with you. Um, when the opportunity exists, it's our choice what we want to share and how we want to share it.
Okay, thank you.
Jordy?
Ryan, thank you for this, man. I appreciate you so much for sharing your story. I think the theme of your life has been like helping other people, and I'd love to know like why you do it. Like what motivates you to dedicate so much of yourself to to your cause.
It's a continued healing and growth journey for myself. Um, every single time that I have a conversation with somebody else, I'm able to uh, lift and manage, what the metaphorical weight that we put on ourselves, of not being able to figure it out, or being there for others, and the loss that, I've had in my life. Um, every single time that I have the opportunity to be able to share with somebody else is just as much of a healing, transitional, and growth period for me as it is for somebody that is willing to listen.
I saw a couple other hands. Did anyone else have any more questions? Okay. Well,
I have a,
Ryan,
I have a question.
okay.
I have a question. If you can, put in the chat, and if you don't know the answer to it, that's okay as well. But why are you here? Why are you on this call? And what are you searching for? It can be rhetorical. You may know already. Um, but understand that what you're searching for and why now may be different 2 years from now. And that's okay. That's part of growing. So we got find my next purpose, find a job, new career path, connections, tools for my toolbox. A lot of great stuff. Want to settle down, civilian side. Transitioning into the new or the next chapter from Matt. That is a very uh, wise comment there. So the one thing I can share as well is transitioning into the next chapter. You know, I've talked briefly here about metaphors. I teach, the meaning of metaphors and how we perceive them or feel when we hear them. And a lot of times we have conversations just based on metaphors, being next chapter, turning a page, stuff like that. Um, what I would suggest is take the day, take the week, take the month, however long it takes, and ask yourself, what is your why within? Because the why of finding a job, moving on to the next job transition, next chapter in your life, that is a transitional piece. Um, but it's not your why. So often not we've heard, my job is what we do. It's not who I am, but who are you? Right? What is your why? What is the why within? What are you seeking? What are you looking for? Right? And it changes, but when you find your why within, then you start building upon your purpose and your meaning. And sometimes it takes a little bit. Sometimes it takes 12 years, right? Finding my why, right? And when there's no associate director or working here at Veterans Rally Point, there's no podcast, What's my why? And that's where I've figured out that's who Ryan is. And it's being here for myself just as much as I'm here for others. And it doesn't matter what the title says in front of my name.
Finding my why within. Those are really,
So
those are
that's a
really
spoiler alert for uh the next book that I already started writing called The Why Within. Um so I put my LinkedIn and I put my email in the chat. Noelle and I have connected. I have another person I just connected with actually 2 minutes before I jumped on this call. He's never done a speaking engagement before, Marine Corps veteran. He's needed some advice on putting words together. Words are hard sometimes, I'll tell you that, especially when you're trying to uh, connect with others and you want to say everything all at once. So before I jumped on this call, I went through the very short paragraph that would take him about 45 seconds to say in a 5 to 10 minute speech that they want him to do tomorrow. And he's like, I just don't know what to say. And I said, tell your story. However long or short it takes, tell your story. Tell it how you want others to see you. And that's what I was doing before I jumped on this call is storytelling. All right. Reflect back on what brought you to this point in time of being on this call and what is the next steps that you want to take to finding your why within.
awesome. Thank you so much for jumping on this call, Ryan. It's been really great to hear from you. His contact information is in the comments. Hit him up if you'd like to connect. He's an excellent mentor. And yeah, just thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. And please do send me a message. We can certainly connect offline, just like Noelle and I have. You know, she messaged me, and the following day we're on a phone call. You know, I'm here as support. I just connected with a veteran on LinkedIn that's looking for, work in Seattle. And, I have a little network out there that I know. So whether it's the immediate or it's just having a conversation, I'm here as a resource.
Awesome. Well, have a great rest of your week and happy Veterans Day.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for listening to me, Jaw Jack. I appreciate